Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk call roll, please?
Counselor Elliott?
Here.
Counselor Fisher?
Here.
Counselor Grizzle?
Here.
Counselor Rieskamp?
Here.
And Counselor Bolin and Furlow are both absent today.
Okay. And first up, we have the approval of the council minutes from March 8, 2017, the regular session minutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the regular session minutes from March 8, 2017. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Next up is the consent calendar. We have the Lebanon City Council agenda for today and the easement for Pacific Power Water Treatment Plant project.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Next up, we have public comments. Council welcomes all respectful comments regarding the city's business. Citizens may address the council by approaching the microphone, signing in, stating their name and address for the record. Each citizen is provided up to 5 minutes to provide comments to the council. The council may take an additional 2 minutes to respond. The city clerk will accept and distribute written comments at a speaker's request. Is there anybody that would like to speak to council? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our regular session. Number 1, status update and bid review of the water treatment plant. Ron Whitlatch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Originally, we were going to have this meeting to award our guaranteed maximum price 1 for the project. After reviewing it and looking it over, I want to make sure that our funding is in line with the rest of the project. So we're opting to wait until the April meeting to recommend award on that. But it serves as a good time to update you on where we're at, the status of it, potential costs, and how it's going to be funded. So bear with me as we go through a PowerPoint. I know some of this is going to be boring, but it's good information for you to have. And we're also going to be asking for some direction from the City Council at the end of this with a couple of different items that we've looked at in value engineering. So to get started, we went through the pre-construction phase services with Sladen Constructors. They're our CMGC contractor. That pre-construction phase services included value engineering with us, Sladen Constructors, Carollo Engineers, and several other consultants that have worked on the original project to bring the project down, bring project costs down. That was the whole idea for the CMGC contract. Gave us an option, alternatives to look at. It gave us real-time costs or close to real-time costs as they were penciling things out. And lastly, it redesigned from the original project. So what we did during the redesign is we took the original design and used, we redlined a lot of drawings, we redlined a lot of specifications in order to not have the cost of redeveloping these, and we put them out for quotes. That's the beauty of the CMGC process. They can do that, whereas we have to have everything apples to apples, and they can go out and it takes a little less design part on the front end for that. So that was a good effort there. So some of the value engineering we've done to date. You see, we've reduced the water treatment plant building size by about 40% from the original project. That's a substantial savings. I think we went from, I want to say, around 24,000 square feet to about 14,000 square feet. So we've definitely reduced the size of it. We've switched to a metal siding. It's not going to be real fancy. It's going to look very utilitarian, but that was probably the cheapest option that we could come up with in order to side the building. You'll notice that I have in parentheses there's color options for council to consider. We actually, when we got quotes during the first one, we asked for a single color siding versus a two-tone. And when I say two-tone, it's just some offsetting colors to kind of make it look a little bit more modern, I guess, and not like a horse barn, I guess, would be a better way to put that. We reduced the raw water intake. Originally, it was designed for 24 MGD, million gallons per day. That is the city's water rights. We stepped back away from that and looked at, all right, what are we really going to need? And we stepped back into the master plan. The master plan says build out for Lebanon within the current UGB is 14 million gallons per day. So we reduced the capacity of the intake to 14 million gallons per day.
And Ron, we're sitting at like 5 or 6 today.
Today, our existing plant is, we have peak days of 3.8 million gallons per day.
Okay.
So we can get up to 4.
That's still quite a bit of
Oh,
capacity
there's
above
huge. Yeah.
current demand.
Yeah, that was one of the reason we sized it for 24 originally was when you're dealing with the NOAA fisheries and the other agencies, their biggest thing is we don't want you back out in the water. We don't want you back out in the water disturbing it. So you look at that and you go, all right, well, we better take our one shot at this because you never know down the road. We're comfortable with what we've put up there in 14. I mean, unless we get a big Intel server farm that uses 10 million gallons of water a day, then, obviously we'd be looking at that. But the other side of that is we're some flexibility built into that. With that, we moved the pump station that was originally on the south side of River Road out at the intake, and we moved the pump station into the raw water intake so as to not have the deep excavation and the deep pump station on the other side of the road. We were able to increase the size of the wet well area and get our pumps to fit down inside that, which eliminated all the deep excavation on the other side of the road and the need for the pump station over there. So it eliminated one of the deep excavations. What else did we do? Removed pumps from it. So we kind of, when I say we removed pumps, we took our pumping schemes and, on average, we pump anywhere from 1.9 to 2 million gallons a day through 6 or 7 months out of the year. So we have what we call low flow pumps and we have high flow pumps, and you have to have redundancy in your high flow pumps in order to get certified to meet your capacity. So what we did is we said, all right, we're just going to go with the high flow, change some pumps around, and we'll get down to a 2 million gallon turn down. It's going to be a little less flexible, but again, you can see in parentheses that's probably if staff were going to add something back or recommend adding something back, it would be the pumping schemes. At least look at it and make sure that we've got the ability to turn it down and it doesn't create an operational issue. And when I say operational issue, it's not a big issue, but for efficiency in the pumps and whatnot, it would probably be the first thing that we'd look at from an operational standpoint.
Does that have a monetary impact?
Yes, it does. And I'll get to that when we get back.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So continuing with value engineering, we reduced our paving at both locations by about 60%. Going to use aggregate, pave the approaches, pave the one parking lot. So we've gotten that down. Sediment basins versus sediment bags. So sediment basins are where our decant water off of our backwash goes. We had looked at and Slade and priced out in their original proposal using sediment bags. We did some research on it. In fact, we actually got to see one in use at our wastewater plant, a little bit different process, but kind of the same type, and tried to figure out who was using these on a regular basis and not just as an emergency basis, and couldn't find anybody. And essentially got scared and said we probably shouldn't do that because we really don't have enough data on it to make that decision. So we went back to the actual concrete sediment basins, something that we know that works. But there was a substantial savings in doing that. It was probably $500,000 to $600,000 savings if we could have went with the bags. But from an operational standpoint, when you start thinking about how you get rid of them, are they really going to function appropriately? It penciled out that we probably better not go down that road and come back here in a year and go, you know what, we should have put the basins in. So we stayed with the basins. You can see other value engineering things that we looked at. City staff's going to purchase all the equipment and furnishings through state contracts. That's much cheaper. I don't have a dollar figure, the difference, because we didn't price that out, but we know firsthand that we can get better deals through state financing or state contracts. Our crews are going to complete the final landscaping of both sites. That's something that we can do internally. We're doing the underground power out at the raw water intake. We're taking the overhead power and we're putting it in underground. Our crews will be digging all the conduits and getting all that prepared as another value engineering item. A big one that has come up is our SCADA system. It's pretty expensive, and Brent has been instrumental in helping us save money here in this location. Our city IT is going to basically run servers out of the Justice Center for the water treatment plant. Brent's got all that figured out, and if I start talking about it, I'll screw it up because he knows what he's doing, and I don't on that end. So that's a big savings there for that. So we won't have to have that in the plant, and we won't have to pay somebody on the outside to do that. We'll continue to look for ways to, throughout the process to save money. But, we've looked at the big stuff. From here on out, a lot of it's just little stuff. And I guess we should note that one of the things that we kind of dug our heels in on as staff, we said one of the first questions asked was, do we want to look at reducing capacity? So in other words, just building a plant for 4.5 million gallons today, right now, with all the pertinences that go with that. And we said no. The reason we said no is because, within 5 years, we could be back here having to change all that stuff out again. So what we've got designed right now and what has been bid and is currently being bid is 4.5 million gallons to start out, pumps and capacity inside the plant to screw in membranes to get to 6 million gallons, and the ability to just add on to the racks and change out some pumps to get to 8 million gallons with this plant. My guess is that's going to last us a long, long time. Based on residential growth and commercial growth, industrial is always a wild card on that, but you just have to cross that bridge when we get there.
And to get from 8 to 14?
Then you're talking about major expansion. You're talking about building expansion, the whole thing. You'd have to expand the building, you'd have to expand your basins, you'd have to expand your wet wells, your chlorine tanks, everything. I mean, it becomes, at that point, it's a complete change.
But 30 years from now, when we're all dead?
Well, I look back, for the, and you're probably right, and you always hate to say, well, growth is going to do this, but in the almost 3 years that I've been here, we've keep records of what we've used, and, we've increased some, but, like I said, on average, we're at 2 right now, and you look at the growth that we've seen over the last 20 years, and you go, all right, well, if we grow that much in the next 20 years, are we going to be at an average 4? Not to mention people are starting to conserve water more because our rates are high, and that's one of the things that people tend to do. So I think with 8, barring any big industrial, you're probably at least 30 to 50 years, I would guess. But keep in mind, when you're selling 8 million gallons worth of water, your revenue stream's there to also help with pay for those improvements. So, right now, I see that as the best way to go. I wouldn't reduce the capacity inside it now. I don't think that's a good option.
So Ron, you feel comfortable with this capacity that with a good-sized major industrial application, let's say, we could handle it?
Yeah. So let's say we had somebody that came in here, and that was one of the things that we said, we've got to be prepared for this. Let's say somebody came in here and wants, let's say, 2 million gallons tomorrow. Well, let's say after the plant's built, because tomorrow we couldn't do it. But after the plant's built, we can add filter cartridges on to get to 6 right away. We can come in and add extensions onto the racks and change out those pumps, and there's some cost to that.
Sure.
But you can get to 8. We could provide that. Yeah. Now, if you had somebody came in and wanted 4 or 5 million gallons, I mean, you're talking a different.
We're maxing out.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting to that point. But you can't really design for that. You kind of got to, somewhere the capital's got to stop, and we've got to we've got to make a decision
I
here.
like the word stop.
Yeah, stop. I do too. So, that's the value engineering that we've done to date. And I had the black screen of death. Well, we have slides too. There we go. So the next one, Sladen provided us, after one value engineering session with them and Carollo, they provided us a cost estimate, basically, of what this is going to be. That was about $25,916. Of that, almost $1 million of it's contingency. During a CMGC contract, a contractor gets a contingency. That's not a contingency that we use to make changes. That's a contingency that he uses. He makes some assumptions that the rock's going to be this deep when we get to here, or it's going to take X amount of time to get this done. That's what that contingency is for. They still have to ask us to use that, and we still have to authorize that. Yeah. However, that's what that's for. And that's typical of any CMGC contract, that they do that. And 4% is pretty low if you think about it. It's all about taking the risk out. And that was the target that we used throughout our value engineering process. So there were some things that obviously changed. One, you've got good ideas and up front that this is, we're going to be able to do this, and this is where it's going to come back in. But when you sit down and you start penciling things out and you start looking at things and you're looking at equipment inside the building and, okay, how is this going to work? Some of the things changed. So we talked about the sediment bags, and back to the concrete. So that changed from their original price. That's going to come back up. The building height increased. They had 14 feet in their estimate. It's got to be a little bit higher than that. We've got these big, tall membrane cartridges that we need to be able to pick up and get up on top of to pin should they get holes in them and whatnot. So 14 feet wasn't enough. Plus you've got to have room for your HVAC system pipes going overhead, so that wasn't high enough. When they originally put this together, they did not have an admin area, meaning there was a control room and that was it. We looked at this. Well, this building's here for the next 50 years. What's the cost to add on a simple office? Some place for people, like a break room. Got to have a restroom and a lab. And so we added that back into the project. And there wasn't a lot of cost to that, but there obviously is some cost to it. But we've also got to have places for people to operate it and be in the building. You can't just sit outside under the awning and try and operate the plant. So we could, but it would be difficult. Raw water concrete intake volume, it increased substantially, and part of that was due to, and this is all stuff that's increased since the first value engineering estimate, after we got back into the redesign and really dug into it. It increased so that we could put the pumps over on the other side of the road and make sure we have enough concrete to hold the thing down and it doesn't float off and look like a ship. And you see concrete prices just from this year to last year. We got quotes on that already in this GMP1. There was about an 8 to 10% increase just in prices there. Steel escalation. We had a little bit of size increase in the raw water electrical building, but not much, and that was basically just to make sure equipment would fit into it. So those are the things that have changed since then. So in January, after, we had a lot of value engineering sessions. We spent actually almost a week in Portland with the Carollo team and the Sladen team and went through this. They basically put the drawings together, packaged them up, sent them out. In February, Sladen began soliciting prices and preparing their self-perform work estimates. And it looks at this point like we're going to have a minimum of 3 guaranteed maximum prices, basically GMPs to our original contract with Sladen. That's how the CMGC process works. We can have multiple, and the reason for 3, some stuff's ready to go. We're trying to get this intake ready, do the in-water work period, and then some stuff we actually went back to the drawing board a little bit and actually did a little bit more than a 70% design on, so that people could bid it a little bit closer, especially like on the electrical and the HVAC. wanted to make sure that they knew exactly what we were asking for on that aspect. So GMP bid package 1, we've got it, we've seen it. Scope of services for that includes all the erosion control, site clearing, temp electrical, staging area, and development of multiple other items at the water treatment plant and raw water intake site and the raw water electrical building. Basically, it's complete construction of the raw water intake, excluding the mechanical, so the whole structure will be built. That means getting out in the river, driving sheet piles, big coffer dams, going through that process. It includes the building, design, fabrication, and erection of the both buildings, actual treatment plant and the raw water electrical building. Membrane procurement, which is about $2.5 million of this contract, which is the actual membranes that go in the building for the cartridges and the whole skid units and all the mechanical that goes with that. You see the costs, $7,746,000 for the first GMP. We looked at that. That's got the 4% in it. We went back with them and said, okay, so what's the difference from our original estimate that you provided in November after one value engineering versus what we have now? And there's about a $464,000 difference, and you can see basically we've kind of covered what the increases were and why on those from the original value engineered estimate. So going forward, GMP2, GMP3, we actually go up to Staten tomorrow morning to start reviewing bid package or GMP package 2. That's going to include everything except for the electrical, instrumentation and control, and the HVAC. So the remainder of the project is going to be in GMP2. We should have a final number on that by the 29th of March. And then GMP3 is scheduled to be early May, and that includes the electrical and instrumentation and control. That's the stuff that we actually went back and did a little more redesign on to make sure that everybody knew exactly what they were bidding. Estimates from Sladen. Basically, these two packages, about $19,600,000. So that's those two packages, 2 and 3, with that. So the next page is costs, which kind of cover all that. This is the one of the critical ones, I suppose. So I basically have laid out what our known costs are for the next at least 3 years. With this project, you can see I highlighted in red what's an estimate, and that estimate's from Sladen Constructors. And that's in line with where we're at with just the increases that we're talking about. I mean, we're seeing inflation in the building trades, and so we're seeing that. I've gotten a price from Carollo Engineers to finish the construction engineering portion of it. It's substantially lower than what we originally projected. A lot of that's due to us having our staff out there. I will have one staff member out there the whole time. We'll do the day-to-day inspection, and Carollo will provide backup on that, and it includes their startup and helping us get through that process too. Brent said he does need money, although he saved me money. He definitely said he needed $125,000, which is actually really good. For all the work that he's doing and the servers that he's buying, so that's included in that. We've thrown a number at what we think equipment and furnishings and the landscaping will be for city staff, and again, that's just kind of a ballpark. If I were to guess, it would be pretty high, $350,000, but it's one way or the other. It's not going to make that much difference on the overall budget. And then we have an operating expense. You can see FY 18-19. So we're going to be operating both plants at that time. This plant is supposed to be online, probably producing water November, December of 2018. So during that time, we'll be operating, during that fiscal year, we'll be operating our existing plant. My guess is we'll probably want to leave that existing plant somewhat idle and able to meet any demand should we have some kind of crisis out there, which we're not planning for, but you never know. we don't want to be without, so we'll have a 6-month period. So that's what the additional $450,000 is for that. Obviously, we owe Albany one more payment, one more big payment of $250,000 per our agreement that was signed last year, and that totals out to about $30,175,000. And not all that's project cost, as this is, I say project cost up there, but this is a lot of this is tied to the project itself, but also not just the construction of it. So, cost savings. You know, if you look at this, you look at what we've originally bid based on the estimates that we've got and based on the actual GMP that I've got, the one, it's anywhere from $3 to $4 million. The value engineering process, that's what has saved us, which is substantial. I'm surprised that it wasn't more, but I think we're chasing inflation in the building trades a little bit, and I'm not sure. You know, I don't know if you'd ever get there. I don't know if you'd stopped and waited. I think you're just going to continually be behind, you know, trying to chase that. We won't know an actual full savings until it's complete. And, you know, again, like I said, we're seeing some inflation in these trades, you know, the steel and the type of concrete that we're using. One other thing, you know, I mean, I've got for costs, I found it very interesting. I look; they have to provide us a labor rates, and it's all per federal law, Davis-Bacon law, wage rates. And I mean, some of the wage rates, you know, a majority of them are under $60 to $70 an hour. That's what they're billing out. So you start adding that up, and you see why the costs are what they are. So on to funding. This is probably the good news, assuming that everything works out like I hope it will on the pages before. Right now we have, well, you can see what the two loans are, the very top two lines. That's from the state. We have approximately $3.8 million in our water utility fund right now under capital available, sitting there today for this project. Through our rate increases, we've basically set this up, and this hasn't changed any since day one. We assumed that we'd pull $1.5 million for the next 2 years from the water fund until we have to start paying it back in December of 2019. There's some wastewater utility fund to finish off the sanitary sewer portion of this. I mean, we've got a little bit of storm drainage, a little bit of water STC. I guess the biggest thing to look at is the difference in them, and there is definitely a difference. You know, not much. I mean, very low on the percentage end, but we definitely have. We're showing today that we actually have a little more cash than what we think the project's going to cost total. So that's good news. You know, that could change. When you start talking numbers these big, 2 or 3%, it becomes a lot of money. And you know, we're doing everything we can to stay within that. But those budget numbers there are tight, and they'll have to be in order to make the project go forward. SDCs we do have, and Cheetah Lake we do have too. So, or Dean's working on Cheetah Lake right now, I should say. So with that. Are there any questions on that portion of it? I know this is long and drawn out. I just felt like that you guys should know what's going on, where we're at, where we're headed, what we're proposing, how we're going to get there. Make sure everybody was still on track. Okay?
I guess just a comment, and I realize that costs never go down, but when we started talking about this a few years back, we were at 17 million, 21 million. Now we're at almost 31 million.
Yeah, it's expensive. Now, keep in mind, let's go back to that, though. When we were talking about this, we were talking about an intake off the canal. We weren't talking about $7 to $9 million more out on the South Santiam River.
Right.
So that
scope change.
There's a huge scope change. You know, you look at the environmental that was associated with that, and you look at what it's going to take to get water off the South Santiam, the utilities that it took to get out there. You know, Yeah, there's a substantial amount of money in that, absolutely.
I guess my somewhat, not that we're going to change anything, but somewhere down the line, I see water rates going up.
You know, they're never going to go down. We're doing everything we can to keep them where they're at now, you know, other than inflationary. I think we can get through this, and I'm glad you bring it up because you are right. There's a lot of line replacements that have to happen within the city. We've got a lot of leaking lines. I mean, that showed from our leak detection study. So, you know, we can continue to Band-Aid those. I'm not saying there's anything dire out there, you know, but obviously. But the one thing that this council's done that's probably going to be recognized at some point, I know you guys take a lot of heat for it, you've done the inflationary. So now, instead of trying to keep up with inflation with a rate increase on top of capital, your capital expense for inflation or for rate increases is going to be much smaller. You know, you're going to be able to go, okay, well, we want 5%, and you'll be able to sell a bond off that 5% versus doing 60%. You know, well, we haven't kept up with inflation. So there's a big difference in what you did there. And I know it doesn't sound like it now, but at some point it will become known. You know, people will see
We'll
that.
be dead.
Yeah, we'll all be dead, most likely. But
Ron,
Yes.
maybe you want to comment a little bit on this, but I know the backside of the scope change is that we won't have a long-term agreement with the city of Albany.
Right.
And at the time we decided to change from canal intake to river intake, you did some analysis about the comparative cost of that.
Right.
And as I recall, we ended up better off going to the river.
Right.
So what we essentially have done, we've taken 50 years of expense that didn't show up on the project before.
Right.
And we've moved it into the project. So it's not like, yeah, the scope has changed a lot, and we've added, I don't know how many millions to the project.
Yeah.
But over the life of this plant, we really haven't seen the 50-year scope change that much.
no, I would agree with that. You've taken all your 50 years worth of capital and thrown it up front, really. You know, you've got some O&M costs with it, but we're building this thing to last for 50 years with some maintenance to it, obviously. But yeah, you've basically taken that cost and you've shifted up front. And after to be honest, after dealing with Federal Energy Regulatory Commission just to get our pipes under the canal, which still aren't under the canal, we've been working with them for a year. I think we made a really good decision.
And 50 years from now, the council is in control as opposed to still being under
Absolutely.
control of another entity.
Absolutely.
So 50 years from now,
Yeah.
again, when we're not here, hopefully somebody remembers.
We'll document
was
it
hard
and put
work
it in
to-
the file.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thanks, Ron.
Yep. So I guess the next thing, we kind of talked about a couple of things where I'd like to get what the council would like to see moving forward. And when I say consensus, I want to see what the overall is before we say definitely. But one of the things we want to know, do we want to put eaves on the building and do we want two-tone color? It's about a $15,000 difference if we do that. An addition, to have a two-tone siding and then to actually have building eaves off of it. So that's something that for you guys to consider.
What size eaves? 2 feet, 4
I
feet?
think they're only 2 foot. Yeah, they're not much. I'd have to look at it. It's not much.
Just for an aesthetic?
Basically aesthetics. Yep.
I would be in favor of the two-color.
It isn't.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said, Wayne.
I'd be in favor of the two-color and the eaves, personally. Just, I don't want to just set an ice cube there.
Yeah.
It's going to look pretty bland. I will give you that. That's why we got options for both.
And those two items are roughly $15,000.
Yeah, just looking through what we've got here in the GMP, roughly $15,000. Yeah, and that's both buildings. And that basically is just two different colors of metal. Whether they do a portion of it like 4 feet up with one color and then the rest a different color, just an offset.
Considering the value engineering you guys have done from what we originally were looking at that building, as fancy and nice looking as that building was going to be, it would be nice to at least have it look decent, as opposed to a shed, which is...
Shed, that's the word I was looking for.
You know, originally, I think we were thinking, we were going to bring, kids out there, and we were going to... So I'm not a big fan of caring what it looks like at this point. If we can squeeze $15,000 out of it, I don't.
To be honest with
I
you,
don't care what it looks like.
We weren't either. Our number one thing during the value engineering process is, does the option we're looking at make water? And building siding doesn't. So we didn't look at the fancy pieces of this at all. I mean, we said strip it down to bare bones, and if it doesn't make water, it's on the table.
I'm with you there.
Okay.
Well, I like to get water a little ways away from the sidewall, so I see the eaves as being a little more than looks.
Yeah, and there is some. They still have a gutter on it, but it would definitely bring a little more character to the building. Yeah. There's no doubt. But this is a decision that needs to be made today. I think we would probably bring this back to you at the April meeting. If we want to add that into it, the GMP now doesn't include that. So something to think about.
Well, I like the idea of it looking, a touch better, and that's not, compared to the project, $15,000 is a very small percentage.
Bob?
I'm kind of on the fence both ways on this, although I hate to see just a shed-looking cube sitting out there. But $15,000, that seems like kind of, maybe we need it somewhere else, but...
And we would look at that, definitely.
Yeah, if possible, I think I would lean to the two. Yeah.
You would lean towards spending it.
Yeah, if we can deal without having to have it. Yeah.
So let me maybe back up here a little bit. So let's see what our GMP2 and GMP1 combined are. And we'll have a pretty good idea of what GMP3 will be before any decisions are made. And in fact, that's kind of what the second bullet there is. It's just the preference of pumps, and that's where our contingencies, the city contingencies, would come into that. And basically looking back at this page back here, I might have taken it out. I did. So there should be a piece in here, where City of Lebanon has a contingency for changes that we want. And that's something that the council needs to decide. And this is where that $15,000 would fall into, the difference in the cost versus what we have funded, also with the pumping schemes. But I would recommend that we look. This is just maybe to trigger a little discussion. Maybe look at this during the April 9th meeting, when we have a little bit more solid feel for what those dollars are going to be. I agree, $15,000, I mean, it's a lot of money to me personally, but in terms of the project, it's kind of...
Yeah, but you got to think, there was a lot of small decisions you guys made along the way.
Oh, yeah.
That were like, that were the same. Well, in the whole scheme of things, that's not very much, but you start adding those up, and you came up with significant savings. So I think, like you said, does it make water was a good thing to keep in mind. So this would cost, this is what you guys want to add back in, and you're thinking, another $500,000.
That definitely, because that has the potential to be, when I say operation, it just, so if I can only turn down my pumps to, let's say it's like 2 million gallons a day, and we're like during December we're on average using 1.8. You have to look at that and go, all right, well, we're going to run off the reservoirs. I got to figure out when to fill them, so it could mean different staffing assignment or timing of staff, when they come in to turn the plant on. So
there's a substantial, possibly, savings of money operationally down the road.
Yeah, I think there's that definitely. And it makes the ease of the plant operation a little bit easier. So that we've got the ability to turn it down, because the reality is the majority of the year we're at 2 million gallons a day or less. So for now, as this grows, that smaller pump, it still would be viable. You can idle your plant, you can leave it on over the weekend and idle your plant during peak times or something and run off your reservoirs. So it just gives more flexibility for the operations end.
I just want to say, because they'll be the ones, CH2M Hill, right, operating? No.
We will.
Lebanon.
Yes. That's the additional cost in here for the $450,000. We've actually got in the budget this year proposed, which I don't know if it's going to stay, but we've proposed to start hiring process.
Okay.
And when I say hiring, it's going to be basically elimination of 2 positions that we already have and addition of those 2 people at the water plant. One of the positions in engineering department won't be hired back, and one in maintenance would be. So it's basically a two position increase to do this, and we've budgeted for that. That's all inclusive in this.
I like it if it means savings down the road, and we directly are in control of those savings and ease of operations. Then I'm all for something like that.
It would definitely be something that would be looked at. It's not a decision that, and I put that up there. Probably wasn't necessary, but I put that up there as our number one thing that we want to bring back. It's probably not necessary until the point we've looked at it and make sure that's what it is. And a change that big would obviously come back to this body for approval anyway. So before we did anything with it. So moving on.
Ron, remind me again about the staffing on a daily basis.
For the water plant? So we're basically looking at 3 people. We're looking at a plant supervisor, which is coming out of the engineering department. These guys are all getting certified right now or getting their schooling. We're looking at an operator out of the maintenance department that's already been there, getting schooling. And then we would have to hire somebody with a level 3 certification. We're looking at that just to meet Oregon drinking water standards. So we're looking at 3 people. To cover that, that would cover, your weekends. Obviously, there's going to be some split times there and whatnot. But we feel everybody we've talked to that runs their own plant says you've got to run your own plant. They've switched back and forth. Is there a major cost savings? Does it cost more? I don't know. We've looked at it and it's really close. But I think at the end of the day, when we talk about operations and maintenance, I look at our staff that we have, and our staff is going to take a lot of pride in making sure that the building's maintained and everything's maintained, because they're the ones that have to run it. Not that CH2M Hill doesn't do that. That's more operations than just normal upkeep. I mean, they do some of that too. But.
Ron, did you share with us at one point about operational that could even be done with the laptop from home?
Yeah, it will be. So what we're shooting for right now, I think during initial, and we haven't got through all that yet, is 1 shift. And then basically we would be able to, you'll be able to monitor from home. There may be, that's one of the reasons for 3 people. You may have to have somebody work Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and have a couple of days off, and then they have to cover and come in. But those are the options. That's why we did it that way. Okay. Again, recommendation to award GMP 1 or 2 at the April council meeting. We'll have the numbers by then. We should have GMP 3 by the May meeting. And then I kind of just put next steps in there, your construction schedule. Assuming if we award the GMP, they want to break ground May 1. They want to go get going. We'll have a substantial completion by September 2018 as per their schedule that they provided in their first one, and then operational by November, December 18. So that's the direction we're headed. I guess the only caveat to that is, we want to make sure that the prices for GMP 2 and 3 come back within the range that they've said, and if that's the case, then we're on our way. That's definitely more than what we expected, but it can be done without, at this point, with the numbers I've provided, it can be done without doing a rate increase. So.
Good details. Thank you for putting it in layman's terms.
Well, I tried. I
Performance.
just, I felt like you guys needed an update. It's so big that we want to make sure that there's not questions out there, that we're not missing something, that everybody's on the same page, and you have that information. So.
Ron, I get asked, not real frequent, but is there going to be a lot of disruption to traffic flow?
No, and yes. No, not necessarily with the water treatment plant project, but yes, with the airport road project and Russell Drive.
Right.
Yeah. We're actually putting a traffic signal in out at the intake site so that they can take one lane. While they're doing construction, they're going to dig right up to that lane from the river. So we're going to actually take one lane, and we're putting a temporary traffic signal up out there. That's way cheaper than having flaggers at $50 an hour out there for 24/7. So
Good.
we'll do that and hopefully save some money there too.
Excellent.
Good job. It's been a fun project all these years.
Sure. Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah. No, it has. It has had its challenges. I will say that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ron. Next up, Airport Road Extension Award, Russell Drive Improvement Projects Contract, Ron Whitlatch.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me get to that page, actually. I don't know if I have that in front of me or not. Do you have a copy of our updated? I gave you all my copies. So we received 6 bids for this project. You see who they were. We opened them on last Thursday. The low bidder was North Sandiam Paving for $2.447 million. We've worked with them before, a great contractor. You can see where our estimate was at. I think a lot of that, and my staff even accused me of inflating it out of fear for what happened in our water plant project. Yeah, you're probably right. So I probably overshot that a little bit looking back on it. But again, we haven't done a project this magnitude roadway-wise for probably 4 or 5 years. So we pull averages and you try and add inflation to it. And you look at projects from last year and you go, okay, well, this is going to be this much. And it turns out we missed it. We just missed it in the wrong way. But again, we're not trying to win it. So I would recommend that we award the project to North Sandiam Paving. We can answer any questions that you have.
Good company.
Yes, they are.
Okay, seeing no questions, entertain a motion.
So move to approve.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Airport Road Extension Russell Drive Improvement Project Contract to the Sandiam Paving, North Sandiam Paving. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
All right. Thank
you,
you
Ron.
for putting up with me for that long.
Appreciate it.
It was hard.
Number 3, amend ordinance number 2375, creating a permit for a beer garden. City Attorney Trey Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This ordinance basically amends a previous ordinance from 2005, which the council provided for outdoor seating for restaurants and cafes in the downtown area out on the sidewalks. As we were looking at the issue of the Strawberry Plaza and the relationship with Conversion Brewing, which will be the next agenda item, we ran into some issues with alcohol in city parks and that kind of stuff. So we wanted to make sure that we had a provision in Lebanon law that allowed for us to provide that type of service through a process similar to the cafes on the sidewalks and that kind of stuff. So essentially all this does is add to the existing ordinance that we could provide for those types of seatings, outdoor seating in other public places other than just on sidewalks.
Which is going to be relevant for the Strawberry Festival when Cheadle is ours as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's more of a, there's I think other provisions that provide for short-term. Are you talking about like for weeks at a time?
Yes.
Or yeah, a little bit different, but.
Okay.
A question, and it may come up in the next agenda item, but, when I go to, let's say, Silverton, for instance, they have sidewalk seating and serve alcohol. And I read in one of these ordinances where it has to be fenced off. Are you going to get to that later, Trey?
Yeah, I mean, that's an OLCC requirement, as far as I know, for an area that is exclusive for that establishment. I'm not an expert on the OLCC provisions, and Matt's probably becoming an expert on. And I'd say that Matt Cowart from Conversion Brewery is here. But one of the requirements that they are going to have is a fenced-off, secure area, so that basically they can make sure that underage drinkers aren't coming in or other people.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions? Okay, if you'd read the ordinance.
Ordinance Bill Number 2017-10, a bill for an ordinance amending Ordinance Number 2375 of 2000. This is going to be in use. And when we backed that into it, it came out probably higher than we would have thought as a lease rate for Conversion Brewery, because we really see that the city's getting a lot out of this, as far as this was something that the city council wanted to see happen. So the discussion then kind of turned to, well, it's not a whole lot different than providing for seating out on the sidewalk, which is a $50 permit. So that's where we actually ended up, was a yearly fee of no different than the sidewalk permit fee of $50 a year. Any other provisions in the contract, I tried to keep it.
The official boundary. Everything in OLCC rule is kind of up for their interpretation. So they come in and it just kind of depends on how they feel about the situation. And so it's always kind of an interesting talk with them. When we discussed over a year ago with OLCC agents, this is what we're looking at doing. I showed them the pictures and said, so what would you like to see? And he said, I'd like to see a 6-foot fence. And I said, well, I pretty much guarantee you that's not going to happen. They pretty much said, yes, if you got a little 3-foot fence, that's a pretty good visual boundary, we'll go ahead and pass that. We actually have a different local agent now than at that point. But he did feel a little uncomfortable with it. It's basically our responsibility as a license holder to make sure that alcohol stays inside those boundaries. And if they don't, we can be fined. Literally, if somebody steps over the line with a beer in their hand, we can be fined for that. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we can pretty small sliver. But I think it's going to be a mutually beneficial agreement. That's something that will bring people into the park.
Yes.
And
very good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, will you go ahead and read the
I think it would just be my motion.
Oh, it is a motion. I'm sorry. Okay. Entertain a motion.
I would move we approve the contract as written.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to create a lease agreement with Conversion Brewery for the outdoor seating. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. We'll temporarily adjourn as the Lebanon City Council and reconvene as the Urban Renewal Agency Board. Airport Road Extension URD project financing, presented by Dean Baugh.
So we've been working on this project for a while. This ties into your airport road. We came about 6 months ago and had one resolution passed, which allows us to include cost before we issue the bond. So now we're at the point where we're ready to issue the debt financing for this project. This is going to be, in this resolution, we're asking for authority to go up to $4.5 million for up to 20 years. We're doing a different kind of financing on this one. We're doing a bank placement financing because the number is so small that I figure we can get better rates when we go out and do this. So we're dealing with through Key Bank, who's worked with us before on bonding. They went out and they're sending, if this is approved today, they'll be sending it out to a bunch of different banks that they know who do URD financing. One thing I should bring up is that they say Key Bank won't bid on it. So when they're doing this, all they're doing is doing the process for us. They're sending it out to everybody else. So that was kind of interesting, they told me. So we asked for 4.5 20 years. What we're actually figuring we're going to get is around 3.8 for up to 15 years. But we're asking for more in case some bank feels generous and thinks they can give us 4.5. We'll take it. Because Ron can use all the money he can get, he says. So this is going to be for Airport Road, Russell Drive, part of Russell Drive, the Porter Park project, and I just lost my name on the other one, for myself, the authority to sign the final document when we get done. So.
Questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll have the city attorney read the resolution.
Resolution number 2017-7, a resolution of the City of Lebanon Urban Renewal Agency authorizing obligations payable from the tax increment revenues of the Cheadle Lake Urban Renewal Area, authorizing a master declaration, delegating authority to negotiate and execute all documents and related matters.
Move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2017-7. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Resolution passes.
Thank you.
We'll adjourn. Thank you, Dean. We'll adjourn as the Urban Renewal Agency Board and reconvene as Lebanon City Council. Number 6, establish performance evaluation process for professional services contracts, city attorney and municipal judge. And that is myself. Okay, so we have the city attorney services contract and municipal judge coming up soon. And during the last executive session, council discussed the need for establishing a process to do an evaluation. And this recommendation is something that Linda's come up with, and I've worked with her. And I appreciate your work, Linda. Thank you for that. And we have these. Have you had a chance to look over the questions? And we'll go over the procedures first. Was there any questions on the procedures? Does that look like what you guys would expect? And it sets out a real clear step-by-step definition of who does what, and
Yep.
I think that will help us in making sure it's done properly each time. And then we have the municipal court judge performance evaluation. She pulled this from some other cities that have similar contracts, and I added a few on the end there that were specifically to our city and some of the things that I thought were important in the courtroom. And then the city attorney was the same. You had gotten those from some other cities, didn't you, Linda, on some of those questions on the city attorney? Questions, yes.
No, I think that's a good roadmap.
Okay.
We do have questions as far as the performance evaluation. I'm not sure if those are the questions you want to settle on or if you have any changes, as well as the rating language. I gave a either or type option on page 1 of each contract. And then I had other questions in red, just for clarification in those contracts.
It is hard to know when you come to giving it a number, or, I mean, that...
Very much.
I mean, and whatever we decide here today, the council 5 years from now may be change, because it's hard and sometimes subjective. But I think we need an option to be able to say not observed, because in a lot of these things, it's like... instead of just taking a guess and saying, well, I don't know, so I'm going to assume I'm going to give you a 5. 5 was good, right? Yeah, I'm going to give you a 5 because I don't know. I'm just going to say I've not observed that. I don't know. That's much more fair, I think, to the person who's getting the evaluation. So.
Yeah, and on both these positions, they're ones that not everybody has interactions with on a common basis, on a day-to-day basis. So I think that the not observed,
If you're going to fill out an evaluation, you owe that.
Absolutely.
You owe the judge
that.
One.
And he has asked us many times to make sure that we come in.
I think it's fun.
Yeah.
But...
it's interesting.
But I'm okay with putting that as a step of an expectation for counselors to do so.
Yes.
I went out there this last Tuesday to set in on it, and they didn't have court that day.
I think they're only Wednesdays, I think.
Well, they have it on Tuesday also, but it's every other, from what I was told.
Okay.
So next Tuesday, they'll have court.
Okay.
And there's different things that happen on certain days. I mean, you might want to just check in with either the court or our office, and there'll be days when there's trials. Sometimes people think that's more interesting. There's days when it looks more like an assembly line because they're doing arraignments, so it's just one right after the other, and it's pretty monotonous. So, to be honest, you call the office and they could probably tell you what a kind of fun trial might be that you could watch too, because there's different ones and different things. And
Well, I talked to Jerry about this, and he said probably Tuesdays would be the best day for us to observe. So, but I've never been there before, so I don't know.
But yeah, I think that is, and so do you want to go over your other questions?
Well, I think one of them's to me, if I'm not mistaken, or at least partly to me, and I think there should be two different evaluations between the prosecution side, which is completely,
Different.
basically, it's a very large portion of what we do, but not very visible to most of us, including myself. I get over there just when they're both away. I've had one trial in a year. It was kind of fun. I got to do a prosecution, but I think that there's quite a difference in who they interact with compared to who I interact with and that kind of stuff. So it may make sense to have separate review processes.
And
So we could work on this and come up with maybe some of the questions here, but tailor it like the judge one, where it's really specific to what they do.
But,
And Trey, I think you're talking about like on page 2, where I'm asking the question, does counsel or the law firm want? Maybe you and I can work on that a little bit, the language.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Rachel and Jesse might have some thoughts too, because they know who they work with the most over there and the best way.
Right. And so you would
'Cause
observe
they've asked-
those in the courtroom as well? I
Excuse
mean,
me?
you would observe those kinds of things in the courtroom as well?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that would be my hope, is that, well, at least one of your visits would be when the law firm is there doing their work too. Because they're not always there. For example, there's trials that go on that we don't prosecute because the defendant didn't get an attorney. We only step in and do the trials if the defendant gets an attorney as well.
Those aren't published anywhere that we could, you're not,
Published as in...
like upcoming, what's the upcoming
The
schedule
agenda.
for...
Court calendar.
An agenda or a calendar for the court system?
There's definitely a court calendar. I'm not sure. I assume it is public, but I can't say that with 100% certainty.
Could we have access to it if it's not?
Dean, do you know? You actually oversee the court system.
I'm sure Marlene and they do, because I know 3 or 4 days before court, they're out there pulling boxes out to get things ready for court. So they do know what's coming up each day.
But is it published somewhere?
Unless it's on the wall in the courtroom or in the lobby.
But it's not on the
I haven't seen
website
it on
or...
the website, no.
I can tell you that Molly in our office, who basically is our secretary, and well, she's our office manager, but then part of her job is also keeping track of all the criminal side. She has a master calendar of everything that's going on. As far as being a public one, I'm not sure.
I would think we would be able to get you a schedule.
Yeah,
We'll look into it.
okay.
hey, maybe it's a dumb question, but why are we giving a 5 rating outstanding when we haven't observed it?
No, it's that's, I think, Linda's question, right, is do you want a 1 to 5 or do you want something like being able to say not observed or exceeds expectations? What do you want it to look like?
What kind of a language? It doesn't have to be a 1 to 5. You may want to rate it completely different, but that's something that council needs to decide how they want to do this. But one thing that needs to be clear is that whether it's Trey or the judge, they need to receive one final performance evaluation, not 6 or 7, and then staff as well.
Yep.
And it needs to be one
Right.
final document.
Right.
The number system, we always go around on this. I think the number system is fine. And then having a not observed
Option.
added in that.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any, is that okay, or do you have any other questions on that?
So that's the option. If you haven't observed,
Yeah.
that's your evaluation.
Like on one of these questions that, carries out directives of the council as a whole rather than those of any one council member. Like if that was something that I just had not observed, instead of going a 1 through 5, I could say.
Yeah.
NA, yeah.
Or not applicable, basically.
NA.
Does that help any, Linda?
The other thing I wanted to point out, it may not be clear, but these are two different performance evaluations in here, one for the judge and one for the city attorney services.
Right.
On both, page 2 of both of those documents, it talks about city staff relations. So there's a little different language. So for the judges, it does say rating provided by the city manager based on compilation of the police department, the city prosecutors, finance director, and municipal court staff, so that because you are maybe only visualizing his proceedings once a year, this gives you a little bit more information to go on, which also includes Trey's office.
So this is what I've seen. This is what staff says.
Correct.
As compiled by Gary. So that overall, because this is probably going to be heavier. You guys are more involved with who we hire than we are.
Correct.
So, yeah.
I can see where it'd be much easier to evaluate the judge's position than Trey's position, because we can go to a couple of sessions out there without any problem, but we can't work with Trey every day off and on, so that's going to be more difficult, I would think.
Well, that's what the staff part is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know about that. Okay.
Any comments, Floyd?
No, evaluations are always just kind of interesting to me. And numbers are so blop, but it's a system we have to do, so.
Okay, so the procedures look pretty good. We'll go with a 1 to 5 rating and a not observed on both of them. And did you have any other questions or needs from us?
I think we'll detail it out a little bit more. I'm going to meet with Trey about a couple things, both performance evaluations, clear up some things, and then probably, if it's okay with you, send them out so that we can get going, because these contracts are up pretty soon.
Perfect. Okay.
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 And at least from the city attorney's standpoint, we appreciate it. I went back and actually looked at the 3 years ago when we did the contract, and I said, you know what, it'd be nice is to have a review, and everybody kind of said, yeah, but we really didn't get around to it, which is partly my fault as well. So I know that Jesse and Rachel are always asking me, hey, have you heard anything good, bad, are we doing okay? And I said, as long as we haven't heard anything bad, I guess you guys are doing great. Except from the defendants that call and complain that we're too mean on them, but other than that. So thank you for getting this in place.
Good. And do we need a motion for this to move forward? Or?
Forward.
Okay.
Just a consensus would be good.
Okay. So we have a consensus that that's okay, what we've discussed? Okay. Thank you, Linda, for your work on that. I appreciate that. It's hard establishing new procedures like that when you don't have those set. Any items from council? I have one item, the Mayor's Conference that is going to be July 27th through the 29th, Friday. Linco Federal Credit Union has been gracious. We're having, let me back up a little bit. Friday night, we're having Mayors on Main Street, where we'll be closing off Main Street, and there will be classic cars from the Rolling Oldies will be parked on Main Street. And there will be food vendors coming in. All the businesses are going to be participating in the Downtown Association. And like I said, Linco has been gracious to foot the bill, a majority of the bill, for bringing in Johnny Limbo and the Lugnuts. So we'll have a classic rock and roll music. The mayors will be out there, but all the community is going to be invited, and it's a free concert. And it's going to be an awesome time. It's going to be real exciting downtown and vibrant. We'll have all the businesses are going to be open, and the Downtown Association, we're working with Gala and the Downtown Association to get that going. So that's an exciting thing coming up.
That's a neat addition.
What's that?
Very nice addition.
Yes.
Yes.
The class of '87 is going to be in town that weekend too. I was telling
Oh,
Linda,
really?
so I'm going to put it out on the.
Oh, perfect.
Because we have our class reunion that Saturday night, so
Ah.
I'll be putting it out.
And you guys are all old. That 50s music is perfect.
Yeah. So
That's
funny
neat.
when an old person tries to make me feel old.
I know.
But yeah, I think we can get a few class of '87 people. in
That's
there,
great.
too.
I think it's going to draw people in from a lot. I remember seeing Johnny Limbo and the Lugnuts when I first came to Oregon back in the 90s when they were at the State Fair. They perform out there quite a bit. So, and I watched some of their videos, and they're quite amazing, and they do costume changes. So it's going to be a fun time. We're going to have tents out. They'll probably be out by the Wells Fargo Bank, on kind of like they did for the Brewfest.
Yes.
Kind of be in that same spot, and the park will be open, Strawberry Plaza. So
Is there
it'll
going to be
fun.
wine?
What's that?
Wine.
You will probably whine.
I will wine.
They're hoping to do an art walk.
Yeah, I think the art and wine walk, I think they're going to try and combine that in that day, so it's going to be fun. Okay, public comments. Anybody else from the public like to comment? Okay, see none. Items from the press. Any questions?
No.
Nothing? Okay. And our next scheduled meeting is April 12th. We had a regular session, and thankfully they've given us grace and we don't have 2 meetings in April. That's because in May we have the Budget Commission meetings on the 4th, 5th tentatively scheduled, but it'll probably be just for the 4th, and then we have the May 10th regular session meeting. So, any other questions, comments? We will adjourn.
Okay.